Well, good morning, all you cool cats and kittens. It's about 9 o'clock on Monday morning, and posting here's your lesson for today. It's going to be pretty short this week. We're going to just be doing um, section notes and a quiz, and also you got your vocab. Here's your vocab this week. It'll be posted at 9. You can see here there's only 15 words. Remember, to do your vocab, just go to the Quizlet. The link is on your Google Classroom. And then you can also, I'll post the notes here on Google Classroom as well. But that's pretty much it. We're only going to go over one section of notes today, and then we will be done, so it won't take very long. So watch these notes right quick. So we're going over the human geography of Southwest Asia. Remember, this is also the Middle East. Your book just calls it Southwest Asia, but it's also the same thing as the Middle East. So human geography means that we're talking about the culture, the government, economics, population stats of the human geography of the humans in the region. And so your book breaks it down. We're not going to watch this, but you can. I'll post the notes. Book breaks it down into 3 sections. We're going to cover green today, this on Wednesday, and this on Friday. But green is the Arabian Peninsula. That's what we're going to cover today. Arabian Peninsula has these countries here like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Oman, and Yemen there. And so we'll cover these very quickly today. You can see the massive size of this peninsula. Texas can fit inside of this peninsula, if you remember from your assignment. Speaking of, do your assignments from Friday. About 80% of you have gotten done with your assignments from Friday. They're due now when this video is posted, so about 80% of you hadn't turned in both assignments from Friday, your vocab quiz and that true size up thing. So make sure you turn that in. You don't want to get falling behind on stuff, okay? So the Arabian Peninsula. The big thing about the whole Middle East, Southwest Asia in general is that Islam is the main religion of the whole region. Now, Islam is based on the teachings of Muhammad. Okay, this is Muhammad right here. Picture I could find of Muhammad. It started about 600 years after Christianity, so around 600 AD. It started with his teachings. He was given messages from Allah, and he was a prophet and the founder of Islam. Muhammad is. So what Islam really did for this region is it really unified it. It gave the people a commonality that you just mainly had a bunch of different groups of people living around this region, all of this region, and Islam kind of unified them by the commonality of religion. And so Islam really helped unify this whole region together. By the 1500s, over the next 900 or so years, it had spread to all over Africa and Asia, all the North Africa here, all the way up here to the Greek territory and the Ottoman Empire, all the way down here into India, and to some of these islands down here as well. So it had really spread over the time of those 900 years. It was very popular amongst the people there. It unified these people, and what they would do is these Islamic tribes and armies would go through, conquer regions, set up their Islamic government into the Islamic government into power, and then they would rule that region, and Islam would spread even more. So Islam is monotheistic. Theist, as you're going to see a little bit over the next couple of units for the rest of the year. Theist is a Greek word for theos, meaning God. So theist right here. And mono means one, so one God. Islam is monotheistic. It believes that there's one God, Allah. They have mosque as their place of worship, whereas Christians would call it churches. And you have the Jewish people would call it a synagogue. The Islamic people, Muslims, are called a mosque. All Muslims are followers of Islam, and they perform these things called the five pillars, which we'll talk about in just a second. And five pillars. What is a pillar? Well, a pillar kind of holds up the roof of your house. It holds up. It provides um, you a house. It provides the standings of a house. Think of the wood walls behind your drywall in your house. Those are kind of holding up the house, holding up the roof of the house. And so they follow these things called the five pillars. It's just the basics of their faith. And we'll talk about those. But what I want you to see over the next couple of slides is that Islam and Christianity and Judaism, they all were started in the same region, and they're all pretty similar and have similar beliefs. I'm not saying they're the same religion at all, but they have similar basic beliefs as a follower of said religions. Okay, let's talk about those five pillars. Five pillars. The first one is faith. Faith, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And that is a phrase that they repeat over and over again in the Islamic faith, is that it's the Iman, but there's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. You can replace those words and replace some words of the people in there, and that would be very similar to the other two faiths, like there's no God but Yahweh, and Moses is the messenger of Yahweh. There's no God but God, and Jesus is the messenger of God. And so, basics of the faith, very similar to the other two religions. The next one is prayer. In most religions, you pray, and prayer is one of the basics of their religion, as it is in other religions. But the difference with them is that they have 5 times a day. They face towards Mecca. In the United States, you'd face east. In other countries, you'd face towards Mecca, and you would pray. Sometimes traffic even stops in some of these countries where the traffic stops. They get out of their car, they unroll a mat, and they pray at the 5 times they're supposed to a day. So sometimes you might pray before your food or pray during church, but praying in the Islamic faith is really important to them. 5 times a day towards Mecca. Next, you have I went too far. Next, you have charity, which is just giving money to the poor. They believe in giving money to the poor is a basic of their faith. You have that, like I said, in other religions. If you go and donate your time to help give Christmas gifts to people, to go to a soup kitchen, even if you're not a religious person, you believe in helping the less fortunate than you are. So those are basics of other religions as well. The other two are ones that are, we're all familiar with these three. These are a little bit more intense in that you might be familiar with them, but more than likely you're probably not or haven't done these two things. You probably have done something of these three. These two, not so much. The 5 pillars here, number 4 is fasting. And during the month of Ramadan, the time changes different times, but it's a holy month where they don't eat or drink anything between sunrise and sunset. So if you're an Islamic person, you would have a small glass of water, but between the time the sun rises and sunsets, you don't eat anything. And the fasting is something that the Christian faith talks about as well, and so does the Jewish faith as well. But fasting is expected in the Islamic faith. Fasting is what it's supposed to do. If every time you think about your hunger, or every time you are hungry and you feel that feeling, you are supposed to believe that God is more important than that food. And so it helps you kind of reset your mind and saying hunger is important, and I'm hungry and food is important for me to live, but I'm going to place God in front of that. And so fasting is something that you can do. Some of you might have fasted, but I'm guessing a lot of you haven't. And the last one is the pilgrimage. And this is one that's, a lot of people in other religions want to go to holy sites, but it's not necessarily a rule or a basic of the faith to do it. In the Islamic faith, it is. You make pilgrimages to Mecca at least once in your life. Mecca is where Muhammad's teaching really took off, and where he spent a lot of his time. And so Mecca is here. They have the holiest of holy sites here. Is their one of their holy sites. They have three or four of them, but we'll talk about the other ones. This is a Hajj, and so this is Hajj praying around the Kaaba here. And so you see millions of people come and gather, and they make a pilgrimage. If you're able, make a pilgrimage at least once during your life. Okay, now let's talk about the governments. I told you that they go in and set up these governments to take kind of control over those 900 years from the 600 to 1500s. And when they would take over, they'd set up this government called a theocracy or a theocratic government, which means theo, once again, you see this means God. Cratic means government. So this is a government led by religious officials. Okay, so that is a theocratic government. And so these Islamic people in charge, even today, these Islamic governments, or the governments of all these Middle Eastern countries, are ran by Islamic leaders. And so that is the religious leaders control the government. That's a theocracy. In the region today, most of them are based on the Islamic law. Their laws of their government are based on their laws in the Islamic faith. And so Sharia law, you might have heard of those things. But it is their government leaders today. These are called ayatollahs. The government leaders are the leaders of the Islamic faith and get some of their wisdom and some of their consult from Islamic leaders. Okay, a couple some more slides, I think 2 or 3 more slides. Now, what happened in the 1500s? Well, towards the end of the 1500s and 1600s, the Muslim leaders were kind of starting to get weaker and starting to fight amongst themselves and weaken out. And so a lot of the Europeans came in and started setting up colonies here in the Middle East. You can see here's Egypt. Here's Egypt. Here's Israel / Palestine. Here is parts of Saudi Arabia, the northern part of Saudi Arabia. And so the French and British especially came in and controlled these countries here. And they wanted to control it because it's very valuable for trade. Okay, remember from the Red Sea getting up here to the Mediterranean, it's very powerful for trade, to get from Asia to Europe, to get from Europe to Asia and Russia. You wanted to control this. So it's very valuable for trade. And then in the 1900s, it's very valuable for oil when they found oil there in the 1900s. And so you have the colonial powers come in and like they were doing in the rest of the world, they're getting more powerful in the 1700s. The Islamic people are getting weaker. And so they come in and colonize this region as well. Saudi Arabia was conquered and taken back by this guy, Abdul al-Aziz, in the early 1920s, and he came in and took control of Saudi Arabia and the territories around it. And even the rulers today of Saudi Arabia are still descendants of his conquering. And then the last part here, today oil, the big money maker that they make in this region is oil. And obviously that's why the United Arab Emirates and Dubai is so rich around here, is because of oil. And so oil is really found in this Persian Gulf region. And these countries get extremely rich off of it. You can see here that, let's say, we'll tell you what OPEC is. OPEC, these countries that have a lot of oil in it, they form this group called OPEC, and that stands for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. And these countries all get together and kind of set, okay, how much are we going to sell our oil barrels for? How much are we going to make so that there's not too much on the market? You can see right now, currently in 2020, in late March, gas prices are very low, and that's because nobody's traveling anywhere because of the quarantine. And so gas prices are really low because they have so much of it that they're selling it for really low to get people to go and buy it. But nobody's going anywhere, so people aren't buying it as much. And so that's kind of, they set the prices really low. But in other times when there's wars and things, they set the prices really high because it is the wars make these regions unstable. And when it's unstable, they're trying to get as much money as possible. So these countries kind of meet together. The big ones are Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE. These are kind of the big producers and controllers. You can see of all the oil reserves in the world, the OPEC countries all together, you can see here control a lot of it. Okay, Venezuela is the big one in South America, but the rest of them are in Africa or the Middle East. You can see that there's a lot of oil here. Okay, and so OPEC countries control a lot of the oil prices. And then the last part here is they're modernizing today. Western culture and technology is kind of seeped in there. Like they're driving trucks across the desert instead of taking camels. They have malls and supermarkets instead of those markets that we talked about in Northern Africa, like the Latin markets where people go through and barter prices. They don't have as many of those anymore because they're modernizing. They have malls and supermarkets. Most people, 75% of the people, live in cities instead of rural areas. That's called urbanization. So a lot of the people are moving to the cities because there's more opportunities for jobs, better livings, better standard of living there. So people are moving to the cities. But religion still plays a big role because religion is very much important to their government. And so that follows down. Mainly in the roles of women. Arabic women are still, in most parts of Arabic religions, are traditionally were less than the men. But as they modernize, women are getting more roles outside the house as they modernize kind of their and more Western culture seeps in. Then you have more of this women doing more jobs. But you go to any of these countries in the Middle East, you'll see women in various forms of covering their head. Okay, some of them can be covering their full body, where you can't see anything. That's in the more strict places. In the less strict places, just covering the top of their head, as you can see here. So there's various forms of strictness of Islamic governments. Not all Islamic governments are the same. The Middle East has different strict versions of it. Some are more strict, some are less strict, and that's true in any religion. In Christianity, you have some forms of Christianity that are more strict and have more guidelines, and some that have less guidelines. And so, this reason that they do this is because of modesty. In the Islamic faith, modesty and being covered is believed to be pleasing to God. You're not showing off things that you shouldn't be showing off there, and so modesty. You might have heard the phrase "modest is hottest," but I mean, in terms of Islamic religion for females, just covering their head it's not a sign of control. It's more of being modest and covered and being pleasing to God. So that's what a burqa is, and you can see that in our friends Robin and Zach, where they live in Egypt. She is a Western person from Texas, yet when she goes out into the market, even though she's not Islamic, when she goes out in the market, she wears a burqa. And that's not for faith reasons, that's just so she can fit in with the culture. And so people won't just look at her and say, "What's up with that? Why is she not wearing a burqa?" And kind of puts a label on her. So she'll put a burqa on just because it's a form of being nice and being fitting in with the culture, even though she's not Islamic. All right, I think that's it. Yeah, we'll talk about this next class. If you've made it all the way to the end of the notes, good for you. If you will send me an email with the phrase Tiger King in it, just 2 words, Tiger King, then I will give you 5 extra bonus points because you listened to this whole thing. So, anyways, if you have any questions, I'll be on Google Meet tomorrow around lunch sometime. If you need to ask me any questions, email me, ask on Google Classroom. I'll try to help you out. But get your work done. Don't get behind. This week's going to be relatively easy on work, so we don't want to make this too difficult this week. Okay, cool, guys.